It's something you do about 20,000 times a day, breathing. But don't be fooled by its simplicity. Breathing isn't just about keeping you alive. It's a powerful tool that influences your emotions, your thoughts, and really your overall well-being. Whether you're feeling scared, excited, worried, happy, or calm, your breathing reflects it all. And here's the best part. By learning to control your breath, you can actually take charge of your emotional state and calm your mind. So today you'll learn about the science of breathing and how that's connected to your emotions, and 7 specific breathing techniques, including what's appropriate for different mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, PTSD, and trauma survivors. If you've had a hard time with breathing exercises before or not, doesn't matter, today's episode will really help. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy you're here. I am your host, Dr. Abby Medcalf. I've got a lot to cover today and so many wonderful things I have provided today to support you in this journey, because this is a big one. I'm going to tell you, I come back to breathing so much with my clients, and it's deceptively simple, but it's very powerful. So we're going to get right into it. The only thing I want to say first is that the Boundaries Made Easy workbook is out. Drum roll, or drum roll supposed to be before, whatever. The workbook is finally, you can get it on Amazon. Of course, it's, I have the Boundaries Made Easy book, which I'm so proud of. And don't forget about my first Amazon #1 bestseller, Be Happily Married, even if your partner won't do a thing. But I do have the workbook. I've been promising it since October of 24, and it is now, by the time you're listening, it'll be February or maybe March of 25. So I apologize. Yikes. There was a lot of stuff getting it published, but it is out. It is here. I'm super duper proud of it. If you already own the Boundaries Made Easy book, you will find different things. A lot of it's the same. I'm going to say that right up front, but the whole ending is different. I have 2 different chapters at the end, and the whole last section of the Boundaries Made Easy book isn't in the workbook, but the workbook is just extending on all the things. So if you bought the book and have had trouble implementing some of it, then I think the workbook would really help you. And if you haven't bought either, I would say buy either. If you want to go deeper, buy the workbook. All right, let's get to it. So let's talk about first the science of breathing and emotions. I love the science, but it's so important for you to understand so that when I give you the tips and the tools, you will actually think, wow, these are really powerful. This isn't just, breathing. And so breathing is intimately and intricately connected to what's called your autonomic, some say automatic nervous system. That's the part of your body that controls all the involuntary actions, the things that you don't control. There's voluntary things like me speaking right now, moving my hands. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. I'm always talking a lot with my hands. That's all voluntary. Involuntary is all the stuff that we don't think about, our heart beating, our digestion, salivating, blinking our eyes, right? All that good stuff. The stuff that happens automatically that you obviously don't have to think about making your heart beat. It just happens. So, and now that autonomic or automatic nervous system has 2 main branches. And I've talked about this many times before. So I'm just, giving you yet another roundup in a slightly different way. I'm always hoping you sort of get how this language comes together if you've been following me for a while. So you got 2 branches of your automatic nervous system. One is what's called your sympathetic nervous system, and the other is your parasympathetic nervous system. Now, your sympathetic nervous system, that's your fight or flight system. Okay, so that's when you go into fight or flight. Your amygdala gets tickled for some reason, and boom, you're right there, right? Your boss says, I want you to meet me in my office at 2:00, and it's 8 a.m, and you're freaking out, right? That's that immediate right there. It gets activated anytime you're scared, you're stressed, or even when you're excited. So, and your parasympathetic nervous system, so the parasympathetic is your rest and digest, we call it. We also call it the tend and befriend, but I'm not going to get into that today. It's really it's the system that kicks in when you're relaxed and calm, which, so rest and digest, when you're eating, think of animals on the plains, a gazelle out on the plain just eating normally. She's in rest and digest mode. She's hanging out with the herd. That's that tend and befriend thing. She's just comfortable. And then, if a cheetah comes running out, onto this Serengeti, where are they? I don't know where they are. I'm probably doing terrible geography, but comes running out. All of a sudden, that sympathetic nervous system takes over and she runs really, really fast, right? Because she's not going to stay and fight. She knows she can't fight, so she's always going to run. So your parasympathetic, that nervous system, that is also responsible for your freeze response. You know how we talk about fight, flight, or freeze? Well, your sympathetic is the fight and flight. Your parasympathetic is actually the freeze. That happens when your body is immobilized under like extreme stress. So rather than reacting with fight or flight, you freeze. This is something that definitely a lot of the women I've worked with who've been raped have had this, where you just submit, you freeze because there's no way to fight, to get out. You can't run, you can't physically get away. So this happens in different ways. And you don't have to have been raped to have this take over. There's a lot of ways where we learn these as a kid, that we couldn't fight with our parents or whoever was hurting us or whatever dysfunction was going on. We couldn't run away. And so you freeze, you go into this sort of, we call it a hypoarousal response, and where you just sort of submit to what's happening. Your brain maybe goes somewhere else. There's a lot of dissociation here, a lot of numbness, disconnection, that kind of thing, right? So I just want you to really see how either can be obviously a survival response. And so if you think about the last time you were really startled, maybe there was like a loud noise that shocked you, or I know, someone swerved in your lane and nearly missed your car while you were driving to work or something, your breath likely changed, right? So let's talk about how that works. It probably if you were shocked or something, it probably became very fast or shallow. Your heart raced. You know how that happens even after, like if you had a near miss, how your heart's still racing, all that's still happening because your body was prepared to react. It's thinking like a tiger is, about to eat you, and it's reacting, and it's not like it all goes away just because the incident stopped, because you're safe. So that sympathetic nervous system is taking over. Okay. Now, if you remember a time where you were maybe lying on a hammock or reading a good book or, just watching the waves roll in, your breathing is likely slow and deep. You're not even noticing your breathing. You feel at ease. That's your parasympathetic nervous system at work, okay? I'm just trying to give you all the different ways that these things happen so you can really understand it. But if you've been in a situation where you felt completely frozen, okay, like your partner seems upset as they ask you a question and you're afraid of giving the wrong response, right? Like, so your partner's upset, they're asking you something and you're so afraid of giving you the wrong response that you freeze. You kind of don't know what to say. You sort of, I don't know. You're shrugging your shoulders. That is your parasympathetic nervous system jumping in. Now, again, that's that freeze submit response. You're engaging that response. Again, it's a survival mechanism. Both of them are designed to protect you. And the freeze submit response is really designed to protect you when you can't fight or flee from a problem, okay, from something happening. There's a moment sometimes with, if you ever watch the cheetah actually catch the gazelle, they often don't show this, but sometimes that gazelle will sit there and be eaten alive, very calmly sitting there. It's, again, she can't get away. She's not, her brain takes her to another space so she can not go crazy with what's happening. And that happens in humans in different ways. So it's her bodies haven't changed in millions of years, really. At least hundreds of thousands, but I would say millions. And depending on who you read and what you follow, but that's the bottom line. We are still kind of ancient beings having a ancient hardwired response. Now, fawning, which I've talked about before, and I'll link because I did an entire podcast on this episode on this because it's so important. Fawning is a complex stress response. So it's beyond fight, flight, and freeze. And right? That fawning, which seems like one of these, it's really a stress response where you attempt to appease or please others to avoid conflict or danger. So it's basically people pleasing on steroids. It's if you were a kid who was abused, you might have learned to people please or been in an abusive environment, or maybe you had a parent who you never knew what their mood was going to be, and you learned to sort of just try to like, okay, let me get this for you, let me make this better, let me be quiet. You learn to try to appease them, try to please them, try to avoid conflict at all costs, and it's really. And that becomes people pleasing, like pathological people pleasing. How's that? That's the best way to say that. So just because you're a people pleaser doesn't mean you're fawning, that's this trauma response, but it could. So fawning is primarily driven by a mix of both that sympathetic and parasympathetic responses. It's like a mix of the fight. It's all fight, flight, and freeze, right? It often involves, what I see is kind of an initial sympathetic nervous system reaction, an initial feeling stressed or anxious, kind of getting the heart rate gets up or whatever. But it's regulated by your parasympathetic nervous system, which is going to urge you to be compliant as a kind of a protective strategy. Okay. And we're almost done with the science here, but hopefully I really want you to get this. It's so, so important because and again, if you want to come back to the relationship tips and tools to the blog post related to this, if you want to like read it later to really get it in your head, it's very, very important because we spend so much time on the psychology of things, especially what I do. I'm a psychologist, right? We spend so much time talking about the strategies, how you have to think and everything. But when you're having a physical, biological reaction, you can't think yourself out of that. You can't. There's other things that have to happen first. And that's why the breathing exercises are a biological response, and they're also a protective factor. So in other words, you can respond with a breathing exercise if you notice yourself in some sort of panic situation or fight, flight, or freeze mode or extreme people-pleasing mode. And you can use breathing in a daily practice to help prevent those things from triggering. Okay? So really, this is good stuff. So I also want to mention something called polyvagal theory here, okay, because it's really tied to breath work. Polyvagal theory was developed by Stephen. I always say his last name. I apologize. I look it up all the time and then I forget, and I say it a different way every time, I think, but I think it's Porges, Porges. He's really famous, so I should be embarrassed, but I'm not. There's a lot of things to remember, We all have a lot of things to remember. We can just have some grace with it. But Dr. Stephen Porges, and I'll link to his books and things and studies and all that. He explains how the autonomic nervous system regulates all of it's amazing research, and it's he and his colleagues, of course, but he explains how that automatic or autonomic nervous system regulates your safety, your connection, your survival responses. And polyvagal theory is special because the traditional quote unquote models, as I just said, they divide the automatic nervous system into just that sympathetic, fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, that rest and digest. They divide it into just those two systems, where polyvagal theory introduces something called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve, which I've talked about before here on the podcast, but I want to get a little deeper on it, it plays a crucial role in your emotional regulation and your resilience. And so it's taking into account everything I'm talking about, right? And adding this other piece that's so critical, and to understanding your breathing, because a lot of your breathing will turn on or off your vagus nerve. And again, that parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, they're all related, okay? So just stick with me. I'm almost done and can get to the tips, but I really want you to understand. So your vagus nerve has two key branches. It has your dorsal vagal, which is basically the freeze response. That branch is associated with, the shutdown, the dissociation, feeling immobilized when you feel like there's an extreme threat or there's overwhelm, okay? And then there's the ventral vagal, which they refer to as kind of your social engagement system. That branch of your vagus nerve, and that's VAGUS, not VEGAS, so like it's not Las Vegas. But the ventral vagal, that branch helps regulate calm, connection, safety. It promotes relaxation. It promotes connection, social bonding. You can see, right? Pretty different. And this is different for, again, usually like trauma survivors. And you know what? I'm going to take a minute here and tell you something, because anyone who's listening who's had extreme dysfunction in their household, or anyone, a lot of people listening might have had trouble with the breathing before. You know, when someone tells you to breathe deep, you feel like you can't do it. You're like, you know, and it doesn't really work and it makes you more anxious. This, you know, today's really for you. I'm going to say this, that anybody listening right now is going to get a quick reference guide to the 7 powerful breathing techniques I'm going to say. So you can just like have them, right? You can download that if you want. You could always go just to the website and get them. But if you're in my One Love Collective, my Patreon online community, you're also going to get journaling prompts for if breathing techniques feel scary. You're going to get a weekly mindful breathing journal, a whole list of other resources to help you with your breathing education. You're going to get a breathwork tracker. And here's why I'm mentioning this. And you're also going to get a trauma-informed breathing. You're going to get trauma-informed breathing techniques. I'm going to actually do a separate thing with Polyvagal and some trauma-informed breathing techniques and resources, which I think is really important for you. And then there's also a script you can follow to create a calming breathing practice in your own voice, which is really important to teach you that your voice can be a calming influence and not just a critical, mean parent. And lastly, I've recorded a allowing your breath visualization, which is separate. So you can record your own visualization to breathe to, but I've recorded one for you just about allowing your breath. If breathing is hard or if it's not. So I'm saying all this because, first of all, for all my people to understand what you get if you come to the online community, I have extras like this every month for everybody. But occasionally I also offer it as a bundle that you can buy without being part of the One Love Collective. So if you're just someone who's like, Abby, I don't want to join your, online community, but I love all those extras and I want them. If this episode resonates with you and all the things, and you want to dig deeper, but again, aren't in for the commitment of joining the Patreon community, you can buy this bundle of all the extras I just mentioned, including the free download, but everything in one place for $8. So, which is quite a deal. I'm trying to make it very affordable for you. You can download the bundle by going to my website. So you go to abbymedcalf.com / and then just go to the website page, the podcast page, or go to the relationship tips and tools page. Wherever you see this episode, there'll be a place to easily download it, pay your $8, and you'll get the whole bundle. So the audio, all those giveaway, everything. It's a lot. It's like a mini course, I think. And I'm doing that because, I do understand that some people just, aren't into joining something where there's a monthly commitment. And if you want all that, I'm going to offer it to you. But if you're part of my One Love Collective, you're getting all that. All right. So let's talk about the effectiveness of polyvagal theory in trauma recovery, because research has shown that individuals with a well-regulated ventral vagal state, again, they have better emotional resilience, reduced anxiety, and improved overall well-being. So that's why you really want to focus on this. And we know that trauma survivors, people with PTSD, extreme anxiety, other kinds, really growing up in a really dysfunctional home, often have an overactive dorsal vagal response, right? So that's why there's some dissociation or emotional numbing or that kind of thing. And so when you engage in this gentle breath work, trauma survivors can reactivate that ventral vagal system, bringing the nervous system back to a place of safety, a place of regulation. So important, especially when you've been trying, maybe you're on medication and maybe you've tried other tools and maybe they're just not working, or you're just, you need more. And again, you need more that's biological, and this really gets you there. So that's why I'm talking about all this, because I found whenever I talk about breathing, a lot of my clients, and even clients who I don't consider trauma survivors in any way, say like, oh, I can't do it. Whenever I start to breathe, I kind of hyperventilate. I get really anxious and it's not working. I see you, I hear you, I'm here for you. Okay. So again, if you're one of those people, I'm going to really strongly encourage you to get the bundle if you're not in my One Love Collective, but regardless. So let's talk about how different emotions show up in your breathing because I really want to, that's really important for you to understand before we get to my big 7 tips. So fear and anxiety show up in you breathe in kind of short, rapid, shallow breaths, often through your mouth, right? You're here if you're, right, if you're in fear or anxiety. And that reduces the oxygen exchange and increases carbon dioxide. That's, what you exhale, which amplifies the feelings of panic. So an example could be when you're about to give a big presentation or have a difficult or you're about to have a difficult conversation with someone. You might notice that your chest tightens, your breaths become quicker, and this can make you feel even more anxious, right? It can even make you hyperventilate, which creates a feedback loop that intensifies anxiety, making it, right, really crucial to regain and control your breath. So the breathing is really for you. Excitement is another feeling you can have. When you're excited, your breathing is quicker, but it's still rhythmic. It's often accompanied by an increased heart rate, but again, there's still a nice rhythm there. Think of when you're at a sports game or your favorite team is about to score and you're on the edge of your seat, or you're about to blow out the birthday candles on your cake, or, your breath speeds up. It matches sort of your heightened state of arousal, but again, it's still rhythmic. Worry and stress definitely affect your breathing. And in this case, your breathing becomes irregular. It becomes chest-based. You're supposed to breathe out of your stomach, right? Not your chest. When you take a deep breath in, your chest shouldn't move. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's your stomach that should be expanding and contracting, not your chest rising and falling. So, but when you're worried and anxious and all those, it becomes very chest-based, and you're up here and your shoulders become, moving up towards your ears, and it all becomes very tight up top. And sometimes you'll even catch yourself holding your breath. Who are my hold your breath folks, right? And you realize you've been holding your breath. So maybe you've been reading a stressful email or scrolling through a tense news article. I've done that, and I've noticed oh my God, I was just holding my breath. That's your body's subtle response to stress. And research has shown, of course, that breath holding during stress, it signals your brain to maintain a heightened state of alertness, heightened hypervigilance. And it makes it even harder to relax, of course. Right? So you see all this, how these different. Now, calm and happiness, if you're calm, content, satisfied, happy realm, your breathing is slow, it's deep and steady, and it's often through your nose. So maybe after a yoga session or during meditation, you'll notice that your breathing is calm, your heart rate is steady, you feel a sense of inner peace, right? Neuroscientists have found that slow, intentional breathing activates the vagus nerve, right? Remember that crucial component of your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest system. And the vagus nerve runs from your brainstem to your abdomen. Okay, your brainstem to your abdomen. So it influences your heart rate, digestion, mood regulation, all of it. So when you activate it through healthy, deep breathing, it signals the body to shift into a relaxed state. It reduces stress. It promotes emotional stability. I could go on. Okay, I know. Another feeling state is what we call flow state or deep focused. And there your breathing is super subtle. It's almost imperceptible. And it's primarily through your diaphragm. So when you're, engrossed in a project or a hobby you love, and the time has flown by, you've kind of wake up and, going, oh, and you're doing something. And, you barely notice your breathing. It's really calm and controlled when you're in flow state. And an example I always give about all this breathing stuff and how it really changes your physiology is if you ever watch athletes prepare for competition. Elite athletes really, and I work with some elite athletes, and they really understand the power of breath control to either calm themselves before a high pressure moment or to energize their bodies for peak performance, right? Depending on where they are. So many use, deep control breathing to slow their heart rate and stay focused under pressure. Others use, fast powerful breathing techniques to, hype themselves up before a race or a match. This kind of strategic breath work, it's very strategic. It helps regulate their adrenaline. It optimizes their oxygen intake for better endurance, reaction time. So again, you might see someone jumping up and down and taking, powerful, quick breaths to amp up for a race, or you might see an athlete using long, slow breaths to calm themselves before an event. It's really interesting. So, or they might do one and then the other. You should watch, because when I talk to my athlete clients about this, they already know all this. If they're elite, they already know all this. They've already been taught all this. And they're really using their breathing in a very conscious way. So let's talk about how to use breathing to calm yourself, and here's the deal. The beauty of your breath is that it's a two-way street. It can change with your emotions, but you can also use it to change your emotions. I'm going to repeat that. Okay? I know, it's a mic drop moment. Get ready. Your breathing changes with your emotions, but you can also use it to change your emotions. I know. So the best part, it's always with you. It's ready to help. Whenever you need it, your breathing is always there. So the next time you find yourself overwhelmed, anxious, stuck in your thoughts, use your breath to pause, to stop, to reset, whatever you need. When you deliberately slow and deepen your breathing, you, again, shift from the sympathetic nervous system, right? That stress mode, the fight or flight, to the parasympathetic nervous system, again, that calm mode, the rest and digest. And so here are 7 evidence-based tools or techniques that help, okay? And again, I link to all the research that I do, and I do a lot of it for these. I read a lot of books. So sometimes I'm linking to a book, sometimes to a research article. But if I'm linking to a book, it's got a lot of research in it. I promise. It's based in research. It's not like, I don't know, some Real Housewife going, here's what I do to feel better. Like, it's none of that BS. Okay. So and if a Real Housewife is listening, right? Just stay in your lane. I love you. Stay in your lane. So, but they're all there. So if you want that, you can go to my website again, to the blog, or to the podcast page, and you will see, we call them the show notes on the podcast page, and you will see all the links to all the things. If you're part of my One Love Collective Patreon online community, everything's in one place. The podcast, the blog, all the giveaways, all the things I mentioned are all sitting in one place. Plus you have live Q&As with me, up to twice a month, depending on what tier you're in. I'm just saying, there's so much, and there's chats in there, and people are asking questions, and I'm even answering those real time, and we're sharing things. We're really a community to help support each other, and it's not just me; it's other people supporting one another who are like-minded. So I'm just saying, it's a beautiful place to be. I really love it in there. Or if you just want to support me, if you're like, I get so much out of the podcast, I would love to give Abby my financial support, then you could do it for that reason if you want. But whatever, if you are or not, I'm always going to give you all the goods right here for free every time. So there's just more goods in other places. All right. So here are the evidence-based techniques that help. Number 1, I'm going to give you 7, is diaphragmatic breathing, or what we call belly breathing. And what it does is it lowers cortisol, which is a stress hormone. It slows your heart rate. It reduces blood pressure. Okay. I'm going to tell you for each one, what it does and what to try and how to do it. And when it's good. So you would try this. You'd place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. This is my favorite. And I have clients do this all the time just to see how they're breathing. And even if you just did this and breathed just however you breathe, but make sure your hand on your chest isn't moving, because that's not where you should be breathing from. It should only be the hand on your stomach that's going out and coming in. As you breathe in, it goes out, and as you breathe out, your hand will come in. Okay, your diaphragm, it constricts. So, but you can inhale deeply through your nose for 4 seconds, right? Letting your belly expand, not your chest. And then exhale slowly through your mouth for about 6 seconds. And you would repeat that for about 2 minutes. Up to 5 minutes is great. And a real life application of this is you might use this before a big meeting, when you're having a big talk with your partner, a big talk with a friend, or really anytime you're feeling overwhelmed. Just a few minutes can really reset your whole mood. And again, a reminder that the free download for today is all of these on just one sheet. So everything I'm saying on one sheet, like boom, you can have them all there so you don't have to try to memorize them right now. The number 2 is what's called 4-7-8 breathing. Excuse me. And this is all about a relaxation response. Gonna take a sip of my water. Okay. And what it does, it engages that parasympathetic nervous system. It engages that rest and digest nervous system. It slows your heart rate. It promotes relaxation. And so what you would do is you would inhale through your nose for 4 seconds. You would hold for 7, and then exhale through your mouth for 8 seconds. And you'd repeat that 4 or 5 times. I would use this if you have trouble sleeping, if you feel anxiety creeping in, or again, maybe before an important event, it's something I use if I'm in my car and I'm ready to go into a party or something. I sort of just use that to reset. It's really nice, especially if I'm going in with family or other people that maybe sometimes are challenging for me. It's a great way to just reset and keep my head together. I have a lot of clients in my practice who are in sobriety, and maybe going into a party where there's drugs and alcohol is difficult. So I would tell them to do some breathing in the car or in front of the house if they've walked up, before they go in. Number 3 is box breathing, and this is famously used by Navy SEALs for their stress control. And what it does, it enhances focus, it reduces stress, and really brings a sense of balance to your nervous system. And so the way you would do it is you would inhale for 4 seconds, you would hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. You'd keep doing that, and you'd repeat for 2 to 5 minutes. There's nothing besides the 4-4-4. You just keep doing 4-4-4. And you would use this when you need to really regain composure, if you've really been kind of spinning a little bit in like a high pressure situation, like interviews, fights with a loved one, public speaking. This is like good stuff. Okay. Number 4 is one nostril breathing, or sometimes called alternate nostril breathing, although they're a little different. You can just do breathing through one nostril and that's it, or alternate between them by closing off one nostril. And what it does is it balances your oxygen flow between your brain hemispheres, and it really promotes mental clarity. It reduces anxiety. Again, all this is from the research. I'm not, this is what I'm telling you, and you can find all the research that you want on my website. So what you would do is you would close, let's say, your right nostril with your thumb. If you use your right hand, you would close your right nostril with your thumb, and you'd inhale deeply through your left nostril. Then you would close your left nostril with your ring finger, right? And then exhale through your right nostril. And you would continue alternating like that for 2 minutes, 5 minutes. And I would always tell you, just set a timer so you don't have to look, and, start with 2 minutes if you're not sure. Start with 1 minute if you're not sure, and give it a go. And remember, you can always stop. If it starts to produce anxiety or something else is going on, just stop. It's no big deal. It's okay. And again, where you would use this in real life is when you need any kind of mental clarity before making an important decision is definitely when I would use this one. If you're waffling back and forth, or you just have to make an important decision of some kind for the first time, I would really highly recommend the alternate nostril breathing. Number 5, I've talked about quite a bit on the podcast and in other places, is straw breathing, or what's called pursed lip breathing. You don't actually need a straw, but I highly recommend a straw. And what it does is it helps slow how you can exhale, no matter how slowly you try to exhale. If you do it through a straw or through these pursed lips, it will be slower. So it increases relaxation and reduces shortness of breath. Right? It's really good. And what you would do is inhale deeply through your nose and exhale as slowly as possible through either pursed lips, or like as if you're blowing through a straw, or actually use a straw. And I like to make my exhale twice as long as the inhale. I shouldn't say I like, that's from the research. So you would inhale, let's say for 7 or 8 count, and then exhale through a straw or your pursed lips for a count of maybe 15 to 16. Okay. I keep, and if you're watching me on YouTube, you can see it. I keep one of these reusable straws, the metal ones. I keep it in with my pens in my little pen holder, my little cup, my little holder over here. And I do wash it. It's funny, like kind of what often when I'm going to the bathroom here at work, I just take it with me and rinse it out, wash it out in the sink, just keep it clean. But I keep it in a little holder over here, and I use it. I think it's great. It's it's really good. I would say real life applications for straw breathing, or when you're feeling breathless, for sure. It's such a great thing to, if you're having trouble like with your breathing, or if you're feeling anxious, it really helps you regain a sense of control over your breathing. It's really good for that. So I would highly recommend. It's probably why I use it and recommend it so much. Number 6 is something we call a physiological sigh. And this is a quick stress release. And what it does is it helps reset the nervous system, and it lowers your stress very quickly. So what you would do is take a deep inhale through your nose, and at the top of the breath, you would take another short inhale. Okay, so, and then another one. Of course, it's really short because you've already taken that really deep breath in. And then you would exhale fully and slowly through your mouth. And I repeat that 1 to 3 times, whatever's comfortable for you. And I would use this when you're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or need a quick way to regain composure, because this is probably the quickest of all of them. And then lastly is something called coherent breathing, which is optimal for your nervous system regulation, which is what all this is nervous system regulation, but this is really good. And what it does is it balances your oxygen and your carbon dioxide, your CO2, which brings a real sense of calm, because often that's what's gotten thrown off. Remember, I talked before about the different kinds of breathing from different emotional states and how your carbon dioxide and oxygen get off. So you would breathe in for 5 to 6 seconds and breathe out for 5 to 6 seconds, and you'd maintain that rhythm for a few minutes. I would say 5 to 10, just in and out, 5 to 6, and or a little longer if you want, or a little less if you want, but just so you're not holding the breath at any point. You're just in that rhythm, counting for a few minutes. It's pretty great. And I like folks to use this before bedtime. I use it sometimes before bedtime. You can even use it during a meditation or right before a meditation to get into a better meditational state, really, or whenever you need a shift. Whenever you feel like you need to shift into a relaxed state. Now, let me say who should use breathing techniques and when to be cautious. So those are the 7, because breathing exercises can be incredibly beneficial for, I'd say, the vast majority of people, but they are not a one-size-fits-all. Nothing is. So while breathwork, it's widely used to, alleviate stress, anxiety, and symptoms even of depression, there are cases where certain techniques might not be advisable. So, and I think this is the thing that gets trampled on a lot, which upsets me, because then I have clients who say, oh, I do that and I panicked. It makes it worse. I'm like, oh God, because you got told to do the wrong thing in the wrong way. To me, this is like literally prescribing a medicine, and you should see it that way in your own way. And so if anybody just tells you, oh, this works for everyone, just do this, then tell them to be quiet. Don't listen anymore. So you really want to experiment. That's why I gave you 7 options, but I'm also telling you this. So if you are any kind of trauma survivor, again, or severe dysfunction in your family, or have a severe mental health issue like PTSD, sometimes those people find that deep breathing or specific breathing retention techniques like that 4-7-8, for example, can trigger anxiety or even flashbacks. It's because slowing the breath too much or holding it can create really sensations that are similar to dissociation or panic. So for individuals, if you fall in this category, gentler methods like the coherent breathing or the straw breathing may be really a better starting point. If you have anxiety or panic disorders, again, breath work is commonly recommended for anxiety. I often do. Some people with panic disorders, though, might feel increased distress with the structured breathing techniques that involved any extended breath holds. So in those cases, I want you to focus on your diaphragmatic breathing or one nostril breathing, the alternate nostril. It really can provide relaxation without triggering those panic symptoms. Okay. And again, I have all of this, if you're in this category, I have more of this on a separate sheet, which you'll, again, you know how to get in the bundle if you want to buy it, or if you're in my One Love Collective. Depression and low energy, anybody who's experiencing depression, slow and controlled breathing techniques might not always be helpful. Because they can deepen that sluggishness that you already feel. So instead, I think more energizing breath techniques like box breathing or that physiological sigh can really help uplift mood and promote alertness. And when I say I think, the research backs me up. Again, I'm linking to all that in the show notes or on the blog page. And then medical conditions, of course. So people with conditions, if you have asthma, COPD, cardiovascular issues, really you should consult a healthcare provider before practicing any breath control techniques. Some methods like the straw breathing, the pursed lip breathing can definitely be beneficial for respiratory conditions. Others may require modifications. So I'd like you to see this kind of as a prescription. And if you have any of those things, if you really have this severe issues with breathing for whatever a medical reason, you should be talking to a medical doctor or whoever helps you with that before taking on the breathing techniques. And as a final thought, I just want to say that, breathing is one of the few bodily functions we can control voluntarily. And when you use it consciously, it can really shift your emotional state in real time. So whether you're feeling anxious, overwhelmed, or just need to reset, these kind of techniques can really help bring you back to a state of balance. And that's really what we're looking for, right? So that is it for today. I know that was a lot of science today, but you really need the science to understand. And that's, I know that my listeners and my people, you're smart and you want to know it all because you're really trying to work on yourself. You don't want just a 2-minute, try this breathing technique. Because as you can see, when I gave you all the science and I give you all the background, it's like, oh, that probably wasn't good for me. And so when you're watching, those 1-minute videos on wherever, TikTok or wherever you go, there's a lot of very well-meaning people on there, myself included sometimes. But, if we're trying to give you something in a minute, you don't get all the context and you might be hurting yourself unbeknownst to you. So I would always tell you to do the deeper work. You're worth it. You're worth more time on yourself than 1 minute. If you do see something that looks, good that you see in a 2-minute video or something, that's great, but go look it up. Go look up the research. Go, put that keyword into my website. See what comes up. There's probably research associated to it. Just do a little work before you just take it on. So again, a reminder, there's so many great extras I have for my One Love Collective. I love you. Thank you for being in my Patreon community online. And if you don't want to commit to that, you can buy the bundle of all the extras. Again, I'll repeat them one final time, which is everybody gets the quick reference guide to breathing techniques. Those, the 7 techniques I said, everybody can get that. And if you're in my One Love Collective, if you're in tier 1, which is the inner circle, you're going to get the, if breathing techniques feel scary, journaling prompts, and you're going to get the breathwork tracker. If you're in tier 2, which is my love accelerator, you're going to get everything that's freer in tier 1, and you're going to get the trauma-informed breathing techniques and resources and a script you can follow to create a calming breathing practice in your own voice. I think these are really important. And if you're in tier 3, which is my VIP Love Lab, you're going to get everything that's free in tier 1, tier 2, and you're going to get a list of other resources to help you with your, just your breathing education, a weekly mindful breathing journal. Like I laid it all out for 1 week with a weekly summarization of kind of a journal about it. And I did a audio, your own, instead of using a script, which I hope you still do. I also created an audio visualization, especially if you have trouble or get a little panicked when you're trying to do breathing techniques. That's, it's to help you and whether you do or not, it'll help calm you. So hopefully, because, we all love my melodic voice. Anyway, thank you so much for being here and listening to the end if you are. I just love you. I love all the things we talk about. Thank you for being here with me because it helps me. I always learn and grow from every single episode. There's never an episode I do where I don't learn something myself and I don't have something, or it's something that keeps it fresher in my mind and I'm talking to maybe a girlfriend and I bring it up or something. It always adds to my life too. So of course it does, because we're in this together and we're in a reciprocal relationship. So you don't just sit there and get, you also give to me, which I feel and I love. If you're someone who never wants to spend any money, but you really want to support me, again, you can, just subscribe on YouTube. You don't even have to go to YouTube to download, but you could subscribe there or like videos. You could follow me on, I guess, the social media, although I'm not very into social media, I have to admit. But there's always ways to support, to give back, because it's important. And I don't just mean for me, I mean any relationship you're in. You want to always think of not just taking, of any creator maybe that you listen to or do. Think about how to have reciprocity in the relationship. It really will make you feel better, like you're fully in it, and it's wonderful for the person who's creating for you. All right, that's really it now. I love you so much. You have an amazing week, and I will talk to you real soon.